Okay, welcome back in. I can finally say I'll be done with my recap of this 32 and 32 series. Now that the Super Bowl has ended, I'll be taking a look at the Super Bowl champions, the two-time Super Bowl champions in the Philadelphia Eagles. The first time they won it was obviously in the 2017-18 campaign when they won a thriller 41-33 over the New England Patriots. And obviously, now just recently beating Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, getting the revenge from 2 seasons ago. So we'll take a look at the team stats and the player stats as per usual. So we'll look at the schedule. I'll do that first. So again, preseason, I never really count that. And if it did count for anything, at least they finished 2-1 in the preseason. In the regular season, they would start their season out in Brazil against the Green Bay Packers, defeating them 34-29. They would lose their Week 2 matchup to the Falcons. They would win at New Orleans before losing to Tampa Bay, heading into their bye week. So heading into week number 6, there was a lot of question marks from Philly. They were hoping to get off to like a 3-1 or even a 4-0 start, but unfortunately that they had to settle for a 2-2 record. But after their Week 5 bye, they went on a massive winning streak, winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row before falling to the Washington Commanders in week number 16, 36-33. So that was a very close game. They would win out their last 2 games against the Giants and Cowboys respectively, outscoring their opponent 61-20 in those 2 matchups. So Philly would finish as the number 2 seed in the NFC. So because of this additional 7th seed, which has now gone on for at least 5 years now, if not mistaken, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, the number 2 seed no longer has a bye week. So they would have to play in the wild card round. They would have like a rematch against the Packers. This time it was actually in the United States, in Philly. And they would defeat the Packers 22-10. In the divisional round, they would play the Los Angeles Rams, winning that game 28-22. Then they had a blowout game against their NFC East rivals and the Washington Commanders, 55-23, and then ultimately winning the Super Bowl with a final score of 40-22. So I'll scroll back and take a look at some stats. So you can see they would win the NFC East by 2 games over the Washington Commanders. 14-3 was their record. So offensively, they weren't the best team, which is hard to believe when you have Jalen Hurts on your team and then the addition of Saquon Barkley, but I will talk about the rush game in just a brief second. So passing yards, they would finish 29th in the league with 3,194. Receiving yards, they would finish 30th in the league with 3,517. First downs, they were right around the middle of the pack, 14th in the league with 95. Now, this is no surprise here. They would finish 2nd in the league in rushing yards, 3,048. You can thank Saquon for over 2,000 yards of that. Obviously, Jalen Hurts did rush for a few yards as well, and I'm sure they had a few running backs, fullbacks, whatever it is, that helped out as well. They would finish 7th in the league in points with 463. On defense, they would finish 13th in the league in sacks. They had 41. Interceptions, they would have 13, which would be good for 12th in the league. Forced fumbles, they were 1st in the league with 22. And tackles, they were 31st in the league with 607. Special teams, field goals made, they were 18th in the league, making 28 field goals. Their field goal percentage would be 77.8%, which was 26th in the league. So unfortunately, they did miss a few 3-pointers. Their extra points made, they would make 47, which would be good for 6th in the league, and their extra point percentage would be 97.9. It was almost perfect, but unfortunately, they would miss a PAT or 2 during the regular season. All right, so now we'll scroll back to the top and take a look at the players' individual stats. So no surprise here, Jalen Hurts led the team in passing yards with 2,903. He would finish with a 60.7 completion percentage, which isn't the best, and his touchdown to interception ratio was 18-5, so it was almost 4-1 in that category. A.J. Brown led the team in receiving yards with 1,079 on 67 receptions and 7 touchdowns. Devontae Smith would finish with 833 receiving yards on 68 catches and 8 touchdowns of his own. And there's Saquon Barkley. They acquired him during last offseason from the Giants. He finished with just over 2,000 rushing yards, 2,005 to be exact, on 345 attempts and 13 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts finished second on the team in rushing yards with 630 total yards, 150 attempts, and 14 touchdowns. But granted, a lot of those were like tush-push touchdowns. So Josh Sweat would lead the team in sacks with 8. He had 27 tackles as well. Zach Bond, the middle linebacker, would lead the team in tackles with 92. He'd had 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. CJ Gardner-Johnson, the safety, would lead the team in interceptions with 6. He had 35 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 12 pass deflections. So Jake Elliott didn't have the best season when it came to field goals. He would miss 8 of them, going 28 of 36 for 77.78 field goal percentage. And Braden Mann would finish with 2,633 yards on 54 punts, averaging just over 48 yards a kick. So there's really not a whole lot to talk about with the Eagles. I mean, when you win the championship, that means you've clearly done something right. As I said at the beginning of the video, that would be their second Lombardi in the last 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, or 8 years. So good on the Eagles for dethroning the defending back-to-back champions. As I've said before, their defense is absolutely elite. I really hope, like, I'm not an Eagles fan at all, but if I was, I would hope and pray that if Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, isn't signed, they get him signed. Like, he turned that Eagles defense around so fast. And when you think about how last year played out, and because they had such a big lead in that division, and then they ultimately lost the remaining X amount of games of the season before getting bounced in the first wildcard round of the playoffs, a lot of people were thinking, man, like, if the Eagles collapse this hard, are they able to come back? And they bounced back with a vengeance. They proved a lot of people wrong. I thought they'd be competitive, but I didn't think they were going to win the division, and I didn't think they were going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl, because I thought other teams like the Lions could have possibly gotten there had they made it to a championship round. And obviously it didn't end up happening for Detroit. So Philadelphia obviously had home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Yeah, I really wish I had more to talk about with the Eagles, but again, just a fantastic season overall. It's just great to finally get like that monkey off your back. Finally, like especially for Hurts, he's been in the league now for 5 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was drafted back in 2020, and then he started at the end of the 2021 season, and then 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. So I'm sure he was glad to get back to the Super Bowl the second time in 3 years and come away victorious this time. So again, a big congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles on winning their second championship in team history. Now, can they keep that momentum going into next season? I mean, it's other than the Chiefs going back to back, and obviously the Patriots from the early 2000s and the 2010s, it's not that easy to A, make it back to the Super Bowl, and B, to win it. I believe they should be contenders again next year, but there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be hungry to try to take them down and eliminate them, whether it's before the season's over or when the playoffs get started next January. All right, that's going to take care of my recap. I'm finally finished with my 32 and 32 series, and I have plenty more, as I've said in other videos, that I do want to cover when it comes to the NFL, whether it's off-season moves from trades, free agency signings, and especially with the draft. There's going to be a lot of changes happening between now and the start of training camp, and certainly there will be a lot of changes between now and the start of next season, which would be 2025-2026. All right, as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.